very, very excited that we have Pauline with us. So I think as we've kind of perhaps reflected a little bit, a lot of people have managed to take a bit of a break in August, rather than an enforced break, perhaps their own self-care, self-reflective break. So self-care being the personal element that's so important, particularly to entrepreneurs, but also the reflective break for those of us and who are managing, leading, owning social enterprises. It's just really important to go, am I still doing the right things, not only for your own business and your social environmental objects, but also in terms of we've got such a rapidly changing marketplace, I think, for all of us. So we've all kind of heard that big phrase, you know, pivoting our businesses. And I think that rapid change that we have around moving our digital plans, fast forwarding them to working online, whether that's remote working and managing staff, how do we kind of work with new data that we have, and then also that element of how do we be fleet of foot about our goods and services and moving those online, feeling safe in that online space. I think maybe that could be a challenge for some people. So that's really kind of why we thought Pauline is absolutely the right person to join us today as our expert speaker. So hello, Pauline. Absolutely delighted to have you here as our sort of wise words about digital transformation. And I think the underpinning line that you added to the profile was really important. In a low-tech environment, we do have some real challenges, don't we, in the social enterprise sector. Many are smaller enterprises and they are challenged around the level of technology that they're able to access themselves, as well as actually understanding latest digital platforms and being absolutely on the ball with really important things like GDPR. And we've got a whole list of emails, but kind of what do we do with them? So that's what I'm hoping you'll be able to sift through some of that, guide us through a little kind of online pathway there. Pauline, for those of you that perhaps haven't met her either face-to-face, as much as we can do today, or around the sector, she's the Chief Information Officer for R&R organisation. And R&R, Pauline, they're a sort of a leading award-winning social enterprise that really specialises in that sort of tech, digital, data area. Do you want to kind of give us a little bit of a heads up around that, please?
Yeah, it's an area that we've been working in since about 2012, I'd say, having come from the voluntary sector and public sector together, and seeing lots of changes happening, and just noticing that our sector, the voluntary community social enterprise sector, sometimes gets left out of these kind of conversations. So we were keen to make sure that we weren't left out, and that we were learning and being included alongside all the other players. So, you know, we in 2017 we launched Digital WM News, which picks up a lot of the information that people need to be aware of around digital in the West Midlands, but it also has a wider readership. We're running events like hacks and unconferences where people from different sectors get together to work on pressing issues using digital and data as ways of addressing those matters.
You did a fantastic hackathon with us, iSE, back in one of the City Drive events, didn't you, around the mental health side of things. Which I think was actually hugely successful and really quite innovative at the time, about bringing together multiple partners, stakeholders, customer groups, and interested parties, and that was a fantastic buzz in the room, and expertly facilitated, if I may say, by yourself. So you know, I've always really enjoyed working with you over many years, really, and I just think, if we can kind of, today it's really about exploring how do we lever all this kind of data and this good stuff that we have sort of within our enterprises, but we don't often look at in perhaps great detail. It's kind of there, and it sits a little bit in the background. And then, sorry, I was got a slight distraction there from Sue, sent me a little note, which was lovely. So thank you very much for connecting with me on LinkedIn, Zoe, and that's great. I appreciate that. So what I'm also interested in is that you have co-founded, Tech for Good and meetup organisations, Net Square Midlands, that kind of thing. So you've got a really embedded network across the West Midlands, which again sort of quietly goes about doing all sorts of things.
Collaboration is the main kind of buzzword, if you like, for this kind of work, and also cooperation, because I know from personal experience, work experience, we none of us can do any of what we try to do on our own. We won't do it as well. We won't do it as well for our beneficiaries if we don't work with other people, and that's what we found with all the events that we run. All the work that we do, we were based at the Impact Hub in Birmingham when it was open for 5 years, and working alongside, kind of mega change makers in other fields, really made a difference to us.
Fantastic. Okay, so today the kind of the three areas that we've kind of pulled out to start sort of looking through, I think these are really interesting for people. So you kind of, just as a quick overview, it doesn't happen overnight. And I think that's going to be a really interesting topic, because we've all held data and been aware of digital platforms for years now. But actually, it's that kind of like, I suppose, check-in, making sure we are moving forward, but don't expect huge, I've just attended one webinar on digital transformation, everything will look rosy in the morning at 9 o'clock kind of thing. So it's how do we sort of use that knowledge and progress that down that pathway. And also really interesting around internal and external stakeholders. So the people that you're working with, and they need different data, they work in different ways. We all adapt to digital working as we are now in different ways. And then really that whole framing about Build Back Better, and really levering data to be one of those cornerstones around Build Back Better. I think that it's a fair capture of kind of the conversation that you want to lead today.
Sure.
Fantastic.
So shall I launch you to my slides?
That would be lovely.
Share my screen. Okay.
If anybody has got any questions, please feel free, pop them in the chat box at the bottom. And then we'll kind of come back to a Q&A towards the end. So thank you very much, Pauline. Really, really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. So so I feel it's important to emphasize, I can't overemphasize, I think the low tech environment that we're in. I work mainly with small organizations, so smaller nonprofits, smaller community organizations who are, providing brilliant services, but often with much less equipment and skills than bigger organizations kind of take for granted. So I think it's good to just keep emphasizing that, because often the charities and the social enterprises that you hear about are bigger and have a lot more resources, and they're fine. I'm more concerned about the rest of us. Often I go to events and people say, digital, that's the future. And I realized recently at a talk, well, actually, no, it's now, or it's even behind us for in some cases, it's all around us. And I like to think that what we do in R&R is make now better with digital and data, that we're conscious of the what's needed to add to now to make it a better experience for people in organizations and their beneficiaries. I think it's useful to remind ourselves, this might be new to some people, but what the definition of digital is. And Tom Loosemore, who co-founded the Government Digital Service, which some of you will be aware of because you use government websites, and you'll know that they all have a similar front end now, to look more coherent. Tom has kind of developed this definition that I think stands to examination by the rest of us in other sectors. So it's about applying the culture, processes, business models and technologies of the internet era, which we live in now, to respond to people's raised expectations. And I think those words, if you get lost in the whole kind of sea of digital, it's good to come back to a definition like this, because it reminds us that these are the things we're trying to do. And you can see in big organizations like Amazon, Ryanair, for example, which I often have cause to use, you know, they're doing this. You know, I wouldn't say that the Amazon website is a delight to visit by any means. I think it's a whole heap of things, but you know, they respond to what people want and people's expectations, and people have started to apply that kind of expectation in other fields as well. So they're expecting an Amazon experience. Amazon are great because they under promise and over deliver. You know, they'll say they'll get whatever you've ordered for, you know, in 5 days or whatever, and usually they deliver before that. So people are delighted with the experience that they get, and it's, you know, we can learn from that. So the question is, how do we do this digital when we can't afford it? You know, as Sally has said, you know, we recognize that people are working in environments where they often don't have the funding and the resources, the skills to be able to present this kind of Amazon, if you like, experience. And so I've got some ideas about that. But also good to remind us is that the government has developed essential digital skills baseline, if you like, a standard now. And these are the kind of things that people expect from, you know, us to have, the digital skills we're expected to have at some level. The standard actually lays out the kind of baseline and then also talks about amplifying it so you can add to your baseline. And it's good actually to visit this essential digital skills standard online and see what's expected, because I think some of us sometimes feel we don't have digital skills, but we do, and it's good to know where we are on these measures. So using devices and handling information, you know, a lot of us think that because we know how to search Google, that, or oh no, sorry, we know that we use Google, that we know how to search the internet. Well, it's not always so, and I think it's worth spending time learning how to search the internet, not just Google, which is a monolith, and you know, it's basically there to sell. So when you're searching Google, it's still trying to sell you stuff. It's not just giving you information. As an information professional and journalist, you know, I know this very well, and I would, you know, recommend you to, you know, use your local librarians and libraries to improve your knowledge of how to search the internet to get the best experience. Creating and editing online. A lot of us are you know, well used to doing this, but still we don't always have the perfect way of doing it. And if you visit the standard, you can see you know, how to, you know, things we can aspire to and learn more about. Communicating. A lot of us again take this sort of for granted. I mean, Sally obviously it's her main background, communicating, marketing, and again, it's kind of thing. Everybody thinks they can communicate until it comes to, you know, we meet real communicators, real people who are really good at doing this kind of business. And I've learned loads over the last while, I'd say, especially because of doing radio, on communicating better and learning how to use online better and social media, which some of us are building up skills on. Martin Hogg was one of the first people I interviewed for a section on social media. He was an early adopter, and it shows that his business has really developed on the social side of things. He's a very good exponent of social enterprise, social media, and one to look out for. Transacting. Somebody said they didn't really understand what this one meant, and it's you know, e-commerce, it's banking, it's online, using making safe transactions online. And again, it's something that we some of us do very competently, but it's one of the ways in which we can be deceived as well. So it's important to be well up on our transacting skills. And finally, and overall, I would say of all of this, being safe and responsible online. It used to be being safe and legal, but they've changed it to responsible. So I suppose they you know, they've different interpretations of it, but it's important again to recognize that being online is not always a positive experience for people, and people are trying to take advantage of us. Some people are, and lockdown will have been a gift to some people, and it's important to, you know, brush up and keep up on our skills on that one.
And I think so important when we are transacting and you know, moving, you know, classes, registrations online, because actually it's about being able to give that safety safe place, security message to our customers as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So to move on to the kind of the three topics, as Sally mentioned earlier, about actually doing transformation, and you know, this is kind of my view of it, and I'm very happy to be having a conversation later on about more about this, especially with people like Swain who do this for a living. I kind of take it on board, but it's you know, it's enjoyable. But you know, there's lots of things to think about, and as it says here, it doesn't happen overnight. You know, IVAR, the Voluntary Action Research Institute, has written a very good paper for small charities called Starting Somewhere, which is about, you know, starting with something that's in your business that you think might make a difference if it was done differently, if it was offered in a more digital way. So it's important to kind of have an overall vision for your organization, and then look at making that, you know, having a desire for change, recognizing, you know, what you might need to do to change, but also being realistic, because as I said earlier about the skills and the resources, we don't always have them, and we try just to do the best we can with what we have available. But sometimes it can be a very small change that's needed, and it can move us on to something bigger. And you know, the personal touch, the great thing about running a social enterprise is it's a social business with the emphasis on the social. You know, we're doing things in the world to make it a better world, and so that's where I think we have more in common with charities and voluntary organizations who are also trying to do that sort of thing. And I think we have a lot to learn from their transformation, as well as kind of taking things from the world of the public sector and commerce business. So the next one is about, you know, who your people are. One of the things I've learned in the unconference world and the world of hacks is that it's not always the boss, the CEO, the person who's the putative leader of the organization who has the best ideas. You know, the person who is doing the cleaning of the office, the person who delivers the mail, the person who, you know, goes out and does your deliveries for you. It's really worthwhile asking them what the processes are that they find most difficult in your organization, and getting their ideas, and giving them opportunities to get involved in the organization, as well as listening to other people as well, and finding channels to be able to offer them to be able to do that. And in public sector and in corporates, they're using tools like Slack and Twitter and intranets that enable them to share information. Being open is really valuable. You know, the more we can kind of throw our doors open and share with what we're doing with other people, the more insight we'll get. And I found this in the world of open data and transparency generally, that transparency is valuable. Unless there's a real need to keep things locked down, you know, let's be transparent, let's try and get more information and sharing going. And similarly, externally, you know, you might think that being a social enterprise in Birmingham, for example, that you know, you have to confine yourself to those fields, and kind of that there aren't other people out there interested. But I found that much the contrary, and especially on social media, if you put a call out, if you join groups, if you know, ask questions and ask for help, there's loads of people out there who are really willing to help. They're not always going to give you the best answer to your question, but they might lead you on to other people who can help. And I have to remind myself sometimes that I don't have to answer every question on the internet, but there are plenty of us out there offering expertise, you know, for no charge. And when we're social enterprises, I think sometimes we can get an even better experience, you know, because people know we're doing it for a social good. Well, I don't think that was something I needed to respond to. No. Okay, and then the final kind of the 3 points was about building on the data, and Sally has referenced this earlier, but it's I think often again in small organizations, in social enterprises, we think we don't have data, or our data isn't that valuable, but we do. And we can learn from retail, for example, where they found that doing simple things like just counting the number of people who came into shops, counting where, you know, where the footfall was coming from, noticing where people were stopping in the shop and looking at you know, the shelves, noticing what people spent their money on in the end, was valuable data to be able to give them opportunities to, you know, increase their profits. You know, social enterprises, we also want to make profits so we can put them back into the organization. And so our data might be different. You know, what are our analytics telling us? Are we using our analytics? Are we if we're on social media, are we taking up the opportunity to use the analytics of Facebook and Twitter to give us insight into what people want from us? Are we having conversations? Are we doing social engagement so that we can, you know, gather valuable data to feed into the next part of our organization, the next part of our development? Are we helping other people as well? I mean, our social capital can be built up so that we can help other people. And we can also find out what's available in the open data world. Open data is data that's available to combine, reuse, repurpose, and there's lots of it out there. I'd like there to be more, as anyone who's involved in the open data world wishes there was, but there are valuable data sets out there that we can use to gain insight into the world that we want to change. You know, we're in the social enterprise because we recognize the ability of business to change lives. And it's good to build up the data and share data with other people to be able to offer that.
Thank you for that, Pauline. That was really you know, a whistle-stop tour to give us some really good headlines, I think. So I think the best way to move forward at this point is really just to kind of open up a sort of shared conversation and just see, you know, if anybody would like to actually come on board, ask any questions, or share their experience. Kieran, hi, lovely. You've got a question and a very polite hands up. Welcome.
Hello. I just posted the question and then you literally just asked the questions. And I was wondering, touch on the point that you just mentioned, Pauline, about engaging with your customers and talking to them online. One of the things that I found as I'm building my community is that people are getting fatigued by polls, surveys, posts asking for you to do like a thumbs up or a heart or whatever. And so when I've like offered competitions or maybe like asked for people's feedback on certain things, there's a massive reluctance because there's so many people in that space. So I've heard this from some other people and I wondered if you had any tips on how to get feedback, real feedback.
Yeah. I think you're quite right, Kieran, that, you know, we've actually been talking about this with a number of different teams, and yeah, that's sort of, we're all a little bit at digital overload at the moment, aren't we? Because we've had this fast track forward into working remotely, working digitally, etc., and actually cutting through that, whether it's either, I suppose, getting to an important person, communication that you need to be starting having a conversation, or whether it is about goods and services and getting your story across, your message across about that kind of solution that you can help provide within your community of need. So
I think I would echo that, and what I would say, I think, is find your tribe. You know, find the people who will help you, and get them then to amplify your messages, because they're out there. You know, people do want to help, and if it's a new product, I don't know what your product or service is, but if it's a new product, then there'll be other people out there who are willing to get involved and engaged. What platforms are you using to try and get your message out there?
I started recently on Insta. It's not something I've traditionally used before, but it's always been Facebook, really. I've just started on LinkedIn, and the work that I do is quite novel in that it's not really a practice that's evolved very far in the UK. It's hip-hop therapy. So it's a concept that a lot of people don't understand in the first place. So I've got some storytelling and historic sort of knowledge brokering to do.
Okay, and have you got video showing what you do? Because it sounds like it's very visual.
Yeah, there's some videos that I've done from some workshops, but then as I was launching my events program, COVID struck, so everything that I'm doing now is transforming onto the online space.
And how does it translate to the online space? Because presumably it's how you gather your group. Do you work mainly with young people, or sort of particular areas of community, BAME communities or geographic localities?
It's disadvantaged people and targeting men and Black and Asian and minority people in particular, and young people, because they have the greatest mental health inequalities. So it's for everybody, but in particular particularly for the people who are really represented in hip hop, which is like young, you know, fame and.
I agree with you, Paul. I mean, it's such a visual element, but are all the platforms that we all communicate on are changing rapidly, and if we are trying to communicate sort of B2C, business to customer, and also to connect with our customer base that are millennials principally, I think that there are so many emerging platforms. It's such a rapid and fluid, you know, you can be doing sort of, you know, TikTok one week, but then all of a sudden TikTok goes again, doesn't it? Replaced by something else. And it's kind of trying to keep track of those different media platforms as well.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Martin. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was really interested in what Kieran, what you were saying, and one of the things that I'm involved with is the Living Well Consortium, where I'm the chair there, and that when Pauline was talking about collaborations, and I think you've got a really good example where you've got lots of organisations coming together with innovative solutions to mental health issues, and as now the reputation is coming, is there, anything that engages into the community. For example, there's a great project, Sport for Life, who I'm sure you're aware of. I see you nodding if you know Tom and the people there. And I just think it's, you know, taking Pauline's point about collaboration, it's free. You put an application together, it's free to join, and who knows what might happen. What they have is, within the consortium, a fantastic person who can help with fundraising bids, and there's so much there. So I think, you know, my biggest regret is not asking for help earlier, because I thought I could do it all myself, you know, and I think I could have got where I needed to be a lot quicker. So I guess that's one avenue that might be open to you.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you should say that, because I've been in touch with Layla from and we've been literally, I've just emailed her today to say we were trying to book in a date.
Okay, all right.
But nice to meet you, Martin.
I'm going to add mind reading to my.
Excellent.
I'm looking for future webinar topics. Beware.
I know you are.
Oh, brilliant. So a little bit of an introduction there, and even if it's sort of setting something up, a bit of a conversation, connection between Kieran, Martin, yourself and Layla. And just sometimes I think that's the bit that we have missed, isn't it? Sort of by doing the Zoom calls rather than face-to-face networking. And all of those conversations that take place around the coffee machine at work, and just sort of soundboarding off other people. And I think that sometimes it's just get together, have that conversation, and who knows what might come out of it. You know, great opportunities.
I'm also thinking there must be influencers that Kieran could contact, and you know, social media offers us, you know, you can contact anybody on social media these days. Everybody, you know, the six degrees of separation. I don't think there's 6 degrees anymore. I think it's 3 or 4. You know,
I never were in the islands.
Yeah.
But now it's down to 1.2 roughly.
Yeah.
Does that help, Kieran, in terms of just a few sort of ideas, and even if it is just sort of following up the conversation, you know, beyond the webinar, and perhaps getting a virtual coffee with a couple of people?
Yeah, I was just writing down social media influencers, because I've been thinking of my influencers being the MCs and the rappers, but there's actually YouTubers and people who are
absolutely
outside of that, you know, music space that I can speak to.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube is the second biggest search engine after Google. So yeah, go there.
I've got things like T-shirts. I guess I can send influencers and things. And
absolutely.
I set up a Insta page and I thought that nothing would really happen with it. But then somebody got in like psychotherapy hip hop group called Rhythmic Minds. So now we're collaborating. So it is definitely useful. It's just having a little bit of time to build up, isn't it? And it was just about growing the reach quicker. But thanks for the tip about the social media.
And I think it's sometimes you know, just within these conversations, it's the confidence, you know, Martin, you know, saying, actually, this is something I wish I'd known earlier. You know, it would have, you know, not necessarily changed the journey, but it would have made more effective, more impactful sort of outputs and outcomes, perhaps a little earlier on in that journey. Because especially as entrepreneurs, you know, even though we might not be delivering similar therapies to yourself, Kieran, it's that social enterprise journey, isn't it? And there'll be somebody that sort of says, do you know what, I was there 3 years ago and this was the golden nugget that I was shared. So I think by passing it on, and so, you know, Pauline, going back to your idea that communication and collaboration is, I think it's really key, and never more so at this time and in our sector. So yeah.
Can I raise another observation that I've noticed? It's quite important to me, and it's about the use of the word therapy online now, because we've got this digital transformation onto the Zoom space. I'm seeing people use terms that are not valid and then don't have training, and it really scares me. And I think that people are offering workshops that are called so and so therapy or therapeutic so and so, and they have absolutely no training or methodology to support their work. So what I'm concerned about is the fact that now we're on this digital space, anybody can set up, like, I could call myself like ruler therapy or ashtray therapy or, you know, baseball cap therapist. And what does it mean? So
I'm going to try that now.
Yeah. What?
Sorry, Kieran, I asked you a question in chat, but I think you've answered it.
Sorry. Yeah.
Is it the...
Yeah, so it's a model that was a social intervention, a social work intervention, and it's based around group therapy where you you know, like poems and song lyrics.
No, I have a friend who works, and because of that very factor that you were saying about therapy, this therapy, that therapy, the next thing, even within legitimate trained people, there's a range of different types of therapy. But I have a friend who set up a similar, what would now be called social enterprise here around art therapy, and I think it was one-to-one more that she was doing. But so it's fantastic to see. I mean, she has an hour-long explanation of how the art fits in, as you can imagine. And I'm not going to try and guess what the hip-hop version of that is, or indeed invite you to say it, but it's great to see hip-hop on that list.
Thank you. It's just widening the cultural like the cultural avenues that people can come in from. And you know, we're in
I'm really glad to hear you say that stuff about training as well. And supervision is another one.
I think writing about what you're doing, Kieran, and making it available on all the channels is key. And you're just going to have to say what you've got to say again and again, because people often don't hear it the first time. But if you have particular insight into this as a therapy, then, you know, stay in that space and make it your own.
I would say, you know, videos, yes. Look at maybe some podcasts, slightly different audience. Again, you know, you can get the sort of the audio through that and tell the story. Maybe with a podcast with some sort of additional visuals going into there as well. And also, Kieran, do you know Anissa at Beat Freaks in Birmingham? Yeah, so I just thought that's a really good, you know, sort of like I can see that collaboration with all the sort of the music.
I've worked with them before.
Brilliant. So does that help? You know, you can sort of give you a little bit of a few things to try, a little bit of extra confidence to go, I'm going to pick the phone up, I'm going to make that contact and ask for help, perhaps, you know, in finding your tribe.
It was what I was asking in the second part of my question was more about, would you challenge people using the word therapy? If you've got like toe therapy or baseball cap therapy and you're like, hang on, I'm a professional toe therapist.
Yeah.
Where's your training? Because
it doesn't always work well online to challenge somebody, because it can just feel like trolling. I think stick to what you say and
get on with it.
Yeah, I think so.
And
yeah.
also, but have that on your website, in your, you know, who you are, and how, you know, a little bit, if you share a little bit of your journey as to how you've come to this and your beliefs around it, and you know, sort of work with your qualifications as well as your experience to actually deliver this, and then have those sort of testimonials, case studies, little live stories kind of thing from people that you've worked with, so that you've actually got that outcome and transformational impact. Because it's possibly a tough thing for some people to get their head around, particularly perhaps if you're going for funding and funding commissioners, if they're from a different background, different generation, you know, sort of within a more corporate or an office-based environment. It's like that, it's getting that connectivity across your different audiences. You're on.
Yeah, that's really spelled out priorities for where my website will go. So thank you. Cheers.
Oh, great. Well,
it's a storytelling element. So
yeah, excellent. Anybody else that's sort of with us and share that? Because I think that's been really useful. I'm sure, you know, we can all kind of take elements of that particular conversation with Kieran and apply it within our own enterprises. Is there anybody else that's got a burning question for Pauline while we're have a little bit of her valuable time? No? I can hear somebody speaking, but it's all a bit muffled, and I'm not sure if they've got just perhaps a low bandwidth.
Maybe now is a good time for me to share some resources, Sally, because it's great to you know, share. I just believe in sharing information and kind of telling people what's out there. So this was just a slide to kind of talk about my digital journey and the different things that I'm involved in. And the Dr. Tech Show has been one of the things we talked about pivoting earlier, when you were talking about preparing for this event. And one of the things that I've managed to pivot to on during lockdown is to be active on the radio with a guy called John Popham, who's very active on social media, and myself and Swain, who's also on the call here, are co-presenters for what we call the Dr. Tech Show on Mondays on YouTube. And that's to kind of address digital inclusion and get people more involved in what's out there to help them get connected online. And then that show is revisited, repurposed for a local radio, Hope Radio in Birmingham on Tuesdays. So, and we get 2 bites of the cherry, which is very helpful. But there are also sorry, let me just get them. I've gone to the wrong. I need to work out how to do this properly. Yeah, so if you can still see the screen. Yeah, so if we
haven't got your shared screen at the moment.
Sharing now. Yeah, okay, go back to sharing. And that's the one. So these are some of the resources that
oh, brilliant,
that have been devised. Sorry, is that visible enough?
It's visible.
That's better. That's better. Yeah, yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, we do an online e-bulletin every month, Digital WM News, which gathers information about what's useful to smaller organisations, mainly, as I say, in the West Midlands, but also it has a national reach. I do have other subscribers in Scotland as well. Getting training and advocacy from our networks. iSE obviously offers great training and advocacy. Social Enterprise UK does a third sector digital leaders course, which might be useful to some people on this call, which I would highly recommend. Their co-presenter is Zoe Amar, who's a brilliant digital leader and has done lots of things in the digital space and is well worth following. School for Social Entrepreneurs, sorry, that was that one. Unlimited offer great sources. The business in the community and Good Finance also offer great resources. And then online learning, obviously at a time like this, online learning really comes into its own. And there's lots of great free courses from these trainers that I mentioned here in this slide. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation as well, getting support from colleagues in online forums. Facebook is a great place to meet loads of people who are very generous with their time and information. LinkedIn groups, sure we have all loads of those. And Twitter happens to be my favorite place to hang out and kind of share information. And then finally, recruiting digital board members. We have boards, and they should be influencing what we're doing, and they getting people on boards who have digital skills, who understand technology, who understand what can come out of using technology better, is an invaluable way of doing things. And then finally, I'm closing with this slide, which celebrates, as I said, the two things that I've pivoted to: the Dr. Tech Show with John Popham and Swain, and then the repurposing of it on Hope Radio. And I just think, I found a real niche there, which really appeals to using all my skills, I think. And I think that's what you have to do in the end. You're doing a social business, but for me, the emphasis comes back to collaboration and social, and I've been able to share some of those skills, and I hope to be able to do more of that.
That's fantastic. Thank you very, very much, Pauline. That's, absolutely brilliant session. And I think that's really been super helpful. That's very kind. A couple of little comments kind of coming up on the chat board to say that people have really enjoyed that session. So, yeah, thank you. Big hoo-ha. One of the things that we will be doing next month is our October WiSE Wednesday. So that's going to be on the 14th of October. It's going to be at 2 p.m. Again. And we're going to be looking at social investment, but we will be doing that with Melanie Mills from Big Society Capital. But it will be about hearing from the social entrepreneurs that have received investment. So I hope that there'll be a little bit of what people didn't tell me. And then actually the benefit of having done that, it wasn't maybe as scary. I think applying for funding and finance and investment can be quite a scary element for social entrepreneurs, particularly if it's the first time that you've done that. I think that'll be a really interesting conversation. So it'll be chaired as a sort of a conversation panel on that one. So I hope you'll be able to join us. There will be links put in the follow-up email that we send out. And again, I wish you all a fabulous rest of the day. Lovely to see you all. I appreciate your time, but most of all, Pauline, thank you so much. I think that's really kind of helped with some clarity. Yay. See you all very, very soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.